Hello once again. This is our final video, our last video. And in this last video, we are going to take the second part of Rules for Discernment of Spirits of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. In this video, much of what I will present to you actually can be read and are found in the website God in All Things. The examples there to illustrate the concepts in each of the rules of the second week are very simple. And so I have chosen to present it to you with some further explanations. So here we are, Rules for Discernment of Spirits, second set, part 2. Second set of rules, we are referring to the more subtle discernment of spirits suitable especially for the second week. We have explained that already in our first video, what we mean by the statement, especially suitable for the second week. In the rules for the second week, the evil tactics of the enemy present themselves under the appearance of good. At first glance, they seem wise and trustworthy. Ignatius here takes an even more sensitive look at spiritual consolation than in the first set of rules. These rules are concerned more with a specially sensitive enlightenment of heart. So a further enlightenment for us that we need so that we will be able to distinguish between true and false consolations. So an example would be this, no? In the life of Ignatius. So remember, he went to Holy Land and it took so much for him to be able to finally arrive at the Holy Land, but he was not allowed to stay there. And meeting that reality, he discerned that perhaps what he's being called to do is return to Europe, return to Spain, and there do more studying so that he will no longer meet opposition from the officials of the church at that time. And so that became very clear to him, no? After his return from the Holy Land, when God's will that he do more study had become clear, that he feels, Ignatius feels that is the call of the situation at that time, he began to experience new light on spiritual things. And you know how he would delight on new lights, new enlightenment about spiritual matters. They were so strong that now that he had gone back to school, it was interfering in his absorbing the things that he is learning, especially the Latin studies, no? So he had made a discernment that he is being called to study so that he will no longer meet opposition and therefore, and questions about his credibility, so he can now engage people in spiritual conversations without fear of being apprehended. And that became very clear to him. But once he began his studies, in between his studies, he would experience enlightenment, more enlightenment on spiritual things, which he would delight in very much, and therefore keeps him from being able to memorize the lessons in Latin that he had to memorize. So if you notice, those are two good things, to go and study, but also to receive much enlightenment. And so through some prayerful reflection, he realized that these apparently good spontaneous experiences were actually temptations, luring him away from following what clearly was God's will for him. So if you notice, the enlightenment about spiritual matters that he's receiving are good. And the desire to study so that he will be able to be of greater help to his fellow human beings is also good. And so it was important that he really looks at these two good things and see which ones are really, though good, moving him away from what he believed is the invitation of God in his life at that moment. So those are the kinds of situations where the second set of rules apply. It is important to remember that the evil spirit can appear as an angel of light. What does this mean? The evil spirit can actually bring good and holy thoughts, attractive to upright souls that are already serious about their spiritual life, and then strive little by little to get in this soul's way by enticing the soul over to his own hidden deceits and evil intentions. So he will first also present to you good and holy thoughts, and then little by little will try to get you away from these initial holy thoughts or good thoughts that he will propose to you. So God is not the only source of pious thoughts. And so we said, when the consolation is not caused, we have no doubt about the holy thoughts and good thoughts that come to us. But when the consolation is with cause, with previous cause, came as a result of something, then we need to discern, because those holy and pious thoughts may not come from God. Here is an example from Father Robert Spitzer. So he said, let's imagine that you are in a state of fervor about improving your spiritual life and love of your neighbor, no? So maybe you found yourself, maybe you have listened to a homily, or you have gone through a retreat, and in that retreat, or as you were listening to the homily, you found yourself wanting, you're already good, but you're filled with fervor to try to even become better, to improve your spiritual life, and to improve your service of neighbor. And so in the midst of this fervor, a thought might come to you. If half of an hour of daily prayer is good, then 3 hours must be better. So you're already in the practice of a daily half an hour daily prayer, no? Daily prayer period. You're already doing that practice. And a thought comes to you, and the thought tells you, if that's good, of course, I'm sure that 3 hours must be better than a half an hour of prayer. And so you begin on this new discipline that from now on, every day, I will do 3 hours of daily prayer rather than just a half an hour. So, but as you start this and get into it, you find yourself growing progressively tired. Imagine from half hour of prayer to 3 hours of prayer. That's a big jump. And so as you go into this discipline, you begin to realize that the new habit is making you feel tired. And therefore also, you don't have enough time for your family and work. And then you begin to snap at people. No? You begin to feel annoyed or easily irritated. You find yourself snapping at people, and then also looking down on them and say, so your patience has become short when it comes to your relationships. But in addition to that, you also find yourself comparing to them and telling yourself that you're holier than thou. They should be praying as hard as I do. Okay. So what is going on there? You have embarked in a more prayer, but there are consequences in your life that are not very good. You have no more time for family and work, and then your patience is getting shorter, and you find yourself also engaging in an holier than thou attitude. So When the devil can tempt a person to give up prayer and turn from God, okay, we continue with the example of Father Robert Spitzer. He can tempt you to try to do something perfectly good, spending more time in prayer, but in an exaggerated manner. So maybe if you say, I can maybe extend it to 15 more minutes, and then if it suits me, I can pray more and move it to an hour. But imagine the jump from half an hour to 3 hours, no? Okay. So the devil will encourage you to adopt an unrealistic time frame, no? So you see the qualities, the characteristics, exaggerated, unrealistic time frame, no? Like some of us will say, I want to attain purity of heart tomorrow. Or maybe take on too many spiritual goals at once. So one quality of a temptation from the devil, it is good, it is perfectly good, but exaggerated in nature and unrealistic in nature. So the devil may try to make you think you can grow spiritually through your own willpower. I can do this. I got this and I can do this without help from God, and present an image of God who is cold, uncaring, yet demanding. So Father Pitzer would say he would imagine that God is speaking to him. Spitzer, this is God speaking. Why aren't you already perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect? I'm tired of waiting for you to get that right. So what do we have here? We have a demanding God. And this is why discernment of spirits is so important. Is the proposed new thing, which is perfectly good, can we conclude immediately that that comes from the good spirit? So when, as you move along through that new holy good thing you want to do, you look at its fruits and you realize that there are negative things that go with it, then it may not be from the good spirit. Okay, so those are the previous rules that we have been introduced to. Now, in rule number 4, no, it says there, for one who wants to pursue good, the evil spirit is often disguised as an angel of light, appearing like the good spirit. So the first thing that the evil spirit does is shift our attention to other good things, okay? Because the evil spirit knows that if he proposes something that's clearly evil, the one who is maturing spiritually will recognize it immediately and therefore reject it. But he still wants your friendship. The evil spirit still wants your friendship. So he has to meet you where you are. And he knows that what will be attractive to you is something good or even better than what you already possess. Therefore, good desires must also be discerned, because once our attention has been shifted to the other good things, we may eventually become prideful and selfish. So Ignatius mentions the downfall of pride a great deal. This is because the evil spirit often works to convince us that what we're doing is good, that we're God's gift to the world. And so we puff ourselves up, feel good about ourselves, and eventually become blinded to our serving our ego, to leaning into selfish ways. So in a way, the evil spirit will convince us that we're really good, and therefore and in the end, we will feel good about ourselves because we have been affirmed. And we are indeed doing something good. But the affirmation will sometimes lead us more to pride, to ourselves. So this is precisely the trap. This is already from God in all things. And I think it's The one who writes for God in All Things is Andy Otto. And this is what Andy Otto says. This is precisely the trap I can fall into in ministry. We can fall into it whenever we're doing good things. Feeling good about doing good things is not inherently bad. And often we are indeed serving God's kingdom and caring for others. But sometimes the evil spirit can hijack this, use this to distract us, no? The affirmation, turning us from our original trajectory of growing closer to God and towards the service of ourselves instead. So in that, we just want us to be aware that the evil spirit can tempt us with good desires, which will eventually make us turn more to ourselves and pride. The next rule, which is Rule 5, speaks about the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay, what does that mean? In Rule 5 of the second set of rules, it says here, the course of a consolation is likely to be from the good spirit if we find ourselves growing closer to God at the beginning, the middle, and the end. If, on the other hand, we notice the path of our experience begins as good, but slowly becomes corrupted and moves towards selfish thoughts and inclinations and even desolation, it is likely the evil spirit who has hijacked the consolation. Again, I can find this in myself. Another example, where I feel good about my ministry and all I'm doing, but then I find myself not praying, not cultivating my spiritual life, almost forgetting about God. The beginning, the middle, and the end don't match up. There's a corruption that happens with the consolation. It begins serving the ego rather than God or others. So this can happen easily in families when we're so focused on the good we're doing at work or in a volunteer group, and we begin neglecting our spouse and children. And if they complain, we might even find ourselves blaming them for not appreciating the good we've done. So at the beginning, okay, you are doing something good, but there's something else that is not happening in the middle. You're doing something good, but then you stop praying, you neglect your spiritual life, even forgetting God in the process. And so there is, in the middle, something happens. And in the end, what do you have is also neglecting family. There are negative consequences in the family relationship. Therefore, in Rule 6, we say, then we must learn from our mistakes. So this is important, meaning to say that we can make mistakes. No? We can find ourselves duped by the evil spirit. If we find ourselves giving in to false consolation, say, yeah, I must take on more work because I'm doing good work. The work that I'm doing is bearing much fruit, so I must take on more work. No? That is the movement. No? And so, if we give in to false consolation, we must resolve to examine what happened and where we might have been led astray. So what happened, no? Then learning from our mistakes, we should simply get back on track and move forward. So again, Ignatius takes us back to the examination of the self. If I begin arguing with my wife, this is according to the example of Andy Otto, author of this site, no? If I begin arguing with my wife on how much time I spend on my ministerial work and how little time I spend at home, then the evil spirit may be doing something. I need to pause and take a step back to assess what's going on. Is the evil spirit hijacking a consolation, a gift from God? Am I giving in to pride or ego? What can I do to resist and get back on a healthy path? Notice how subtle the evil spirit can creep in. In the next rule, Ignatius talks about water quietly being absorbed by a sponge or a drop of water hitting a stone. So what is he talking about here? He continues and says, again, for those who are maturing in the spiritual life, the good spirit is gentle like a drop of water, quietly being absorbed by a sponge, while the evil spirit is harsh and disturbing, like a drop of water hitting a stone. So whatever thought or proposals you hear, no, look at it and look at the quality of what the proposed thought, no? Here is his example again. The other day, I was praying with a passage where Jesus said, I no longer call you servants, I call you friends. And I imagined Jesus as a friend. And what's that like? And I felt such peace and consolation. The feeling was like the gentleness of water being absorbed by a sponge. I even imagined how comfortable I'd feel with Jesus coming into my home and just spending time with him. You see how gentle, no? The way it enters in his consciousness. Ignatius has even talked about the good spirit being like that, the warmth and joy of welcoming a friend into your home, and the evil spirit being like a burglar, banging on the door, trying to break in. So this is another way by which we discern, no, the proposed thoughts of the evil, whether it comes from the good spirit or the evil spirit, no? In that sense that we are we receiving something very gentle, or is there something comes to us in a very harsh way? No? So that's what the Rule 7 is about. Then there is such a thing as the afterglow, which is explained in Rule 8. So what is the afterglow? When we experience sudden, unexplained consolation from God, which sounds like the uncaused consolation, and find a sort of afterglow of exhilaration and feeling on fire for God, we can be tempted to make quick and rash decisions. Just as we should make important decisions in desolations, we should refrain from making big decisions in the extremes of blinding consolation. So we will wait until things settle and then engage in a thoughtful discernment before making any major decisions. So all of us have probably impulsively made a decision because we're just so on fire and excited by something. The example of Andy Otto here is about his wife and he, who were so taken with the portrait mode on iPhone X and so excited about they could take amazing photos of their toddler. And so he impulsively went to the Apple store and paid way too much money and bought them for the two of them. And the wife even said, "Are you sure we should buy them?" And he was able to justify it and said, he was able to justify buying it now, no, buying it right away. And this is a common thing for us. We impulsively buy things and then later regret it. Okay. And so this is why it's often advised, no, wait a couple of weeks before you settle down, a couple of weeks to settle down. And when your head is clearer, the excitement has come down, then you can make a decision. So Ignatius is saying the same thing here. So if you look at this, the opposite of this is in what not to do in desolation, that you also, or rather similar to this is what not to do when in desolation. Do not make a life change. Here also, do not act immediately or do not rush into decisions as a result of the consolation that you experience, because afterglow is not the consolation. It is what follows after you experience consolation. So there's another example here, no? It says here of an afterglow. There was once a man who went through RCIA. That's a catechism for adults who want to become Catholics, no? Who wanted to become Catholic and then become a priest, okay? Even before he started the RCIA process, the formation process, he already had a detailed plan and timeline for theology study and priesthood. So he was on fire with the love of God from his conversion. So it's still the honeymoon phase, no, of his honeymoon phase with this new religion, with his becoming Catholic. What this person would benefit from would be a slowing down, a waiting for some calm so he can discern well his desires for pursuing the priesthood. So the conversion experience is the consolation, but the decision, no, to become a priest is probably an afterglow. So we need to first settle down so that we can discern well the good desires. So you see, good desires must also be discerned well, because they may be coming from the evil spirit or simply an afterglow. Now, this also happens when people rashly jump into marriage for similar reasons. Sometimes the glow of consolation can blind us. So, discerning the subtle movements of the spirit can be hard and complicated. This is why it can be so beneficial to have a spiritual director, a mentor, or a trusted friend who can help us discern these movements, to notice things we can't, to see how we're blinded. That's the benefit of talking it over with another person, because in a way we are helped by another pair of eyes, okay, who will probably see things that are hidden from us, no? The value of another set of eyes, another pair of eyes looking at the same reality, because our vision can be limited by all kinds of other things, no? We are not able to notice, or we are blinded to some factors in our decisions, no? So here is a story, another story of an engaged woman who might benefit from Ignatius's rules for the discernment of spirits. There are lots of things her fiancé is uncomfortable talking about with her, including faith, intimacy, and money. She's keeping certain things about herself in the dark, secret from him, maybe to maintain the relationship. It seems the evil spirit may have hijacked some initial consolation in their relationship. Most likely, they really get along around so many things. The beginning, the middle, and the end are not all steering them towards the other or God. So the beginning may really be good, but as the relationship develops, there are things that are now hidden, no? And it doesn't look like it comes from the good spirit. There's a sense of disquiet and agitation in the relationship, like water harshly hitting a rock. There are lots of red flags, but she seems to be blinded to them. The wedding dates has been set, things are booked, money is paid, marriage isn't going to be marriage isn't going to magically improve their communication or uncover what needs uncovering. This person could use a good spiritual director who can point out these red flags. These signs that the Spirit, not from God, may be leading her astray. So, Andy Otto has shown in this example the many different ways the evil spirit may be acting in the situation. Pope Francis, in his apostolic exhortation titled Rejoice and Be Glad, says, we have to decide whether it's a new wine brought by God or an illusion created by the spirit of this world or the spirit of the devil. At other times, the opposite can happen when the forces of evil induce us not to change, to leave things as they are, to opt for a rigid resistance to change. Yet that would be a block to the working of the Spirit. We are free with the freedom of Christ. So as human beings, we have the gift of freedom and we are free with the freedom of Christ. Still, Christ asks us to examine what is within us, our desires, anxieties, fears, and questions, and what takes place all around us, the signs of the time, so that we can recognize the path that lead to complete freedom. In Thessalonians 1, chapter 5, verse 21, we read there, test everything and hold fast to what is good. The discernment of spirits should ultimately aid us in discovering the true self who God made us to be and help us put aside the false self, the ego, which so often drives so many choices. Discernment, then, is not a solipsistic self-analysis or a form of egotistical introspection, but an authentic process of leaving ourselves behind in order to approach the mystery of God who helps us to carry out the mission to which He has called us. Remember, it's God's mission. It's not our mission. We are simply collaborating with God's mission for the good of our brothers and sisters. So discernment of spirit is a process that helps us focus outward towards our sisters and brothers. It's a process of growing in knowledge that seeks to lead us toward life, peace, and a healthier relationship with God, others, and self. It is helpful to remind ourselves that the good spirit is our advocate, continually wanting to encourage us and give us peace. Already, from the beginning, the good spirit is our advocate and is present to encourage us always and to give us peace. But as we've seen, it's complicated. An objective third party, like a spiritual director or mentor, can be very helpful in making sense of the subtle movements of the heart. So, what do we have here? In this course, you have been presented with new concepts. It's like being presented with a new set of spectacles or eyeglasses, no? That makes you or helps you to see things that you're not able to see when you're not wearing them. Okay? But the first time you try it on, you will find some difficulty in seeing. And so you need time to be able to wear it for a while, to get used to what you're able to see when you put them on. The new set of spectacles will make it possible for you to see, or you won't create them. But the new specs, the new eyeglasses, will be able to help you recognize when the thing you ought to see, the thing that your eyeglasses are made for, begin to present itself. So you do not produce the experiences of consolation or desolation. But when they are there and you are put and your eyeglasses are put on, you will recognize them as compared to consolations, desolations, movements of their spirit going on, but you are not choosing your specs. They're not on. You do not recognize them. Okay, it's the other analogy maybe is like you are given, you buy a new computer, a new laptop, no, and it has all kinds of upgraded, updated apps, no, which the seller will religiously talk to you about. You have this, these are the features of this computer, and at the time that you are buying it, as long as it makes you type and do something in your computer, you're not paying attention to all the apps that are there. So like discernment of spirit is like a new app, okay? Perhaps at initial period, it's very difficult to understand the app. You don't even know when to use it, how to use it, but that's okay. The important thing is it's now available to you. The set of spectacles and eyeglasses to be able to help you discern is now at your disposal. Whether you will be able to use it to maximize your use of it, it will come with practice. And it will come, okay, you will be able to use it appropriately when the right time comes. But you do not create the conditions of what you will have to see. Rather, you put them on so that when the conditions that will require that you see more clearly what is actually happening, you have your eyeglasses on and you will be able to recognize it. I've been in this work for 30 years and I'm still learning. Because every spiritual journey is unique and you have no control on how it will unfold. You simply need to be alert, vigilant, and hopefully have your specs on when what you need, when what needs to be recognized will be present itself, you will be able to recognize them. So I hope that all of this have been helpful to you. It's okay not to have perfected the ability to discern. It's a lifetime learning process.